Today, we're going to go on a pretty wild ride, not across mountains or oceans, but through a landscape that's just as complex and, honestly, a lot closer to home: the human digestive system. We're going to follow the epic, roughly 9-meter journey that every single bite of food you eat takes, from the second it passes your lips to the moment leaves your body. I mean, have you ever really stopped to think about it? You chew, you swallow, and then you kind of forget about it, right? Your part is done. But that is exactly when the real adventure kicks into high gear. It's a journey through this winding tube, a world of powerful chemicals, perfectly timed muscle movements, and just some incredible biological engineering. So let's start the tour. So here's our roadmap for today. We're following the path of our food through what's called the alimentary canal. That's basically the main highway from start to finish. Think of this as your guided tour of the body's very own internal food processing plant. Okay, our journey starts with a pretty dramatic change. The entire goal of this first stage is to take whatever solid food you're eating, a sandwich, an apple, you name it, and start the process of turning it into a liquid paste. And this whole thing kicks off the very instant that food enters your mouth. Right away, your body launches this two-pronged attack. First up is mechanical digestion. That's the physical part. Your teeth get to work cutting, tearing, and grinding everything down into smaller, manageable bits. This is super important because it massively increases the food's surface area. At the exact same time, chemical digestion starts. Your salivary glands release saliva, which isn't just water. It's loaded with an enzyme called salivary amylase, and it immediately starts breaking down complex starches into simpler sugars, right there in your mouth. So once you swallow, that food doesn't just, fall down into your stomach. Nope, it's actively pushed. This happens through a process called peristalsis. It's a series of powerful, wave-like muscle contractions that squeeze the food down the 25-centimeter esophagus. It works like a perfectly automated conveyor belt. It's actually so effective, you could eat and swallow while hanging upside down. Though, for the record, I would not recommend trying that at home. After that quick trip down the esophagus, our food arrives at its next stop, the stomach. And let me tell you, this is way more than just a storage bag. The stomach is a muscular powerhouse. Its walls contract to physically churn and pummel the food, all while flooding it with gastric juice, a really potent mix of hydrochloric acid and enzymes. This process liquefies everything into a paste we call chyme. And that acid, it's also a brilliant defense mechanism, killing off most of the nasty microbes that might have hitched a ride on your food. But here's a cool question. How does the stomach digest the protein in your food without digesting itself, since it's also made of protein? Well, it uses this clever biological safety switch. The cells in the stomach lining secrete an inactive enzyme called pepsinogen. In this form, it's totally harmless. But the moment that pepsinogen comes into contact with the stomach's hydrochloric acid, it instantly activates and transforms into its powerful protein-destroying form, pepsin. Only then does it get to work, snipping large protein molecules into smaller chains. It's a perfectly timed chemical reaction. All right, our food, which is now this liquid paste called chyme, is finally ready for the main event. We are now entering the small intestine. This is the nutrient extraction zone. This is where the most critical, most important work of digestion and absorption actually happens. And just to give you a sense of scale here, this organ is over 5 meters long. That's more than 16 feet. And all of that is expertly coiled up right inside your abdomen. So why on earth is it so long? Well, it's all about maximizing the time and the surface area to pull out every last drop of goodness from your food. Just how important are those 5+ meters? Get this, a staggering 90% of all digestion and nutrient absorption happens right here in the small intestine. The mouth and the stomach basically just did all the prep work. This is where the real payoff is. Now, the journey through the small intestine kicks off in its very first section, the duodenum. You should think of it like Grand Central Station for digestion. It's the short, C-shaped tube where the chyme arrives from the stomach and is immediately greeted by a flood of different digestive chemicals coming in from other major organs. And this is where you see some amazing teamwork. First, the liver sends in bile, which acts kind of like dish soap on grease. It takes big globs of fat and breaks them down into tiny, tiny droplets. Then the pancreas chimes in, sending pancreatic juice packed with enzymes to attack proteins, starches, and those little fat droplets. And finally, the wall of the intestine itself secretes its own juices that make the final cuts, breaking everything down into the simple building blocks your body can actually absorb. Okay, so with all these nutrients floating around, how does the body actually grab them? The secret ingredient here is surface area. The inner wall of the small intestine isn't smooth at all. It's covered in millions and millions of these tiny, finger-like projections called villi. This creates a sort of velvety carpet that increases the absorptive surface to a massive degree, making sure that as the nutrients drift past, they get captured and shuttled into your bloodstream. So, what's even left of our meal at this point? Mostly indigestible fiber, a lot of water, and some salts. The nutrient extraction phase is officially complete. Now we're heading into the final stage of the journey, processing the leftovers. The stuff entering the large intestine is still very watery, so its number one job is water reclamation. This organ, which is about 1.5 meters long, diligently works to absorb most of that leftover water along with some essential salts and pull them back into the body. As that water gets removed, the waste material is slowly and gradually compacted, getting it ready for the final exit.
And that, of course, brings us to the final step, defecation. Once the waste reaches the very end of the line, the rectum, it triggers an involuntary nerve reflex. But thankfully for all of us, we also have voluntary control over that final exit point, which allows us to, choose the right time and place. It's actually a surprisingly sophisticated process that marks the end of our food's long, long journey.
So let's zoom all the way out now and look at the big picture. We've just followed a meal from a solid bite all the way to becoming cellular fuel and then, finally, waste. The entire system is nothing short of an amazing, fully automated internal factory. When you really think about it, this whole complicated journey can be boiled down to three main acts. Act 1, breakdown. That happens in the mouth and the stomach. Act 2, absorption. That's the main event, and it all goes down in the small intestine. And finally, Act 3, elimination, where the large intestine reclaims water and gets rid of the waste. It's just a beautifully logical and efficient system. Your digestive system is a masterpiece. It really is. It's a mechanical factory, a sophisticated chemical lab, and an efficient recycling plant all rolled into one, and it's working in perfect harmony 24/7, usually without you ever having to think about it. So the next time you sit down for a meal, maybe just take a second to appreciate the incredible journey it's about to start. It really is amazing, isn't it?